Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind warm beds, clean clothes, and the incredible luxury of indoor plumbing. Instead, we're climbing aboard a pirate ship, a place where every surface is damp, everything smells suspicious, and your co-workers solve disagreements with knives because apparently that counts as conflict resolution. So dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe pull the blanket up a little higher, and let your brain drift out onto the ocean. We're going to spend a slow, sleepy evening discovering why life as a pirate was much less epic Hollywood adventure and much more floating workplace with catastrophic HR policies. And if you happen to doze off somewhere between the moldy biscuits and the bucket that everyone politely pretended wasn't the bathroom, then I'd say we're doing exactly what we came here to do. The first thing that would surprise you is how small a pirate ship actually was. Movies love to show enormous vessels with endless decks and dramatic staircases. In reality, many pirate ships were surprisingly compact. A famous pirate vessel might carry anywhere from 60 to 200 people, all squeezed together into what today would feel closer to an overcrowded apartment building that refused to stay still. Privacy simply did not exist. If you wanted a moment alone, the ocean politely informed you that absolutely not. You slept beside dozens of other sailors. You ate beside them. You worked beside them. You argued beside them. You probably snored beside them. And someone was always snoring. Someone else was coughing. Someone else had an infected tooth. Someone else had decided this exact moment was perfect for repairing a sail with a hammer. Welcome aboard. Your bed, if we're being generous enough to call it that, was probably a hammock. Now, hammocks sound relaxing today. People buy expensive hammocks for their gardens. Those hammocks are clean. They smell like fresh fabric. They do not swing above barrels of gunpowder while 50 exhausted men argue over salted pork. A pirate's hammock was usually rough canvas. It absorbed sweat, sea spray, smoke, rain, and occasionally whatever unfortunate substance happened to land on it during a storm. It was less luxury camping, more permanent damp fabric experience. The rocking of the ship also wasn't always the gentle motion people imagine. Sometimes it was pleasant. Other times it felt as though the Atlantic Ocean had developed a personal dislike for everyone on board. You'd spend hours trying not to slide into another sailor, or onto the floor, or into something much worse. Speaking of worse, let's discuss the smell. Because no matter how many paintings you've seen of handsome pirates dramatically staring toward the horizon, none of those paintings include smell. Actually, probably because oil paint hasn't figured that one out yet. A pirate ship combined the aroma of seawater, tar, wet wood, human sweat, smoke, dirty clothes, spoiled food, livestock on some voyages, unwashed bodies, stale alcohol, and a collection of medical conditions that modern antibiotics would solve in about 3 days. Instead, everyone simply accepted that the ship smelled terrible. Eventually, your brain probably stopped noticing, which is honestly one of humanity's strangest survival skills. Food wasn't exactly inspiring either. Fresh bread disappeared within days. Fresh fruit vanished even faster. Vegetables became distant memories. What remained was food specifically designed to survive long ocean voyages. Salted beef, salted pork, dried peas, hardtack. Now hardtack deserves special recognition. Imagine bread. Now remove every pleasant quality bread has ever possessed. Make it harder than a brick. Bake it until moisture becomes a myth. Congratulations. You now have hardtack. It could last for years, sometimes decades, which sounds impressive until you realize the only reason it lasted that long was because absolutely nothing wanted to eat it. Not even mold seemed enthusiastic. Pirates often soaked hardtack in soup or beer before eating. Otherwise, they risked damaging their teeth, which was unfortunate because dental care wasn't exactly flourishing in the early 18th century. If your tooth hurt, well, hopefully eventually it stopped hurting, one way or another. Water sounds simple enough. You bring water, you drink water, problem solved. Except wooden barrels were not magical. After weeks at sea, stored water often became stale, sometimes slimy, sometimes full of algae. Occasionally, it developed tiny living companions that nobody had intentionally invited. Many sailors actually preferred weak beer or diluted rum because it tasted slightly better than questionable barrel water. Notice I said slightly. Nobody on board was sipping tropical cocktails decorated with tiny umbrellas. Those were still a few centuries away. The daily routine started incredibly early. Before sunrise, people were already working. Sails required constant adjustment. Ropes needed checking. Decks needed cleaning. Barrels needed moving. Repairs never stopped because saltwater has a remarkable talent for destroying absolutely everything it touches. Wood rotted, metal rusted, ropes frayed, clothing wore out. Even the strongest ship constantly demanded attention. Ignoring maintenance was an excellent way to discover the bottom of the ocean, which most pirates understandably preferred not to do. Contrary to popular belief, pirate crews weren't complete chaos. Hollywood loves the image of drunken captains shouting random orders while everyone swings from ropes. Reality was much less energetic. Ships depended on discipline. Even pirates had rules. Someone had to know navigation. Someone maintained supplies. Someone repaired sails. Someone handled cannons. Someone cooked. Although cooked may be giving the process a bit too much credit. More accurately, someone warmed up yesterday's disappointment. Pirate captains actually held less absolute power than many naval captains. Crews sometimes voted on important decisions. Captains could even be removed if enough pirates lost confidence in them, which sounds surprisingly democratic, until you remember everyone involved owned multiple pistols. Still, compared to many European navies, pirate ships could offer sailors a strange kind of equality. Loot was divided according to agreed shares. Compensation sometimes existed for injuries. Lose a hand, receive extra payment. Lose a leg, receive even more. Not exactly ideal healthcare, but for the early 1700s, it was oddly practical. Of course, nobody wanted to collect those benefits. Paperwork was difficult with one hand. Actually, everything was difficult with one hand. The weather ruled every single day. Modern weather forecasts simply didn't exist. No helpful phone notification warned that tomorrow included severe thunderstorms. Instead, sailors watched clouds, wind direction, birds, the color of the sea. Experience became the forecast. Sometimes they guessed correctly. Sometimes the ocean politely reminded everyone that guessing was not the same thing as knowing. Storms could last for days. Imagine everything you own becoming soaked. Now imagine it never completely drying. Your clothes stayed damp. Your blanket stayed damp. Your boots stayed damp. Your socks. Well, if you still had socks, they were almost certainly damp too. After enough time, constant moisture damaged skin. Blisters formed. Feet developed infections. Simple cuts became serious problems. Modern waterproof clothing suddenly feels like one of civilization's greatest achievements. Pirates also spent astonishing amounts of time doing absolutely nothing exciting. This surprises many people. Adventure stories skip over boredom. Real life cannot. Hours passed while watching the horizon. Days passed with nothing in sight. Weeks sometimes disappeared into endless blue water. The excitement, when it happened, was usually brief. The waiting lasted forever. So sailors invented games. They sang, told stories, repaired equipment, gambled when they had something worth gambling, argued over trivial matters because boredom has always been surprisingly creative. Someone probably claimed another sailor stole his spoon. Someone denied it. Someone else offered an opinion nobody requested. Congratulations. An afternoon had successfully passed. And honestly, that's probably exactly how we'd spend it too. Part 2. The crew, the chores, and the very uncomfortable reality. By now, you've survived your first evening aboard, which honestly is already better than some unfortunate sailors managed. You haven't fallen overboard. You haven't insulted the wrong person. And you've successfully accepted that every single object on this ship either creaks, leaks, or smells vaguely suspicious. That's progress. Now comes the part that movies rarely linger on. Work. Because pirate ships weren't floating vacation resorts. They were floating businesses. Illegal businesses, certainly. But businesses all the same. If everyone stopped working, the ship stopped functioning. And if the ship stopped functioning, the ocean had an unpleasant habit of taking ownership of it. Your day would probably begin before sunrise. Not because pirates loved mornings, quite the opposite. Nobody has ever enthusiastically climbed out of a damp hammock before dawn and thought, wonderful, another day of hauling wet rope. But the wind didn't care how sleepy you were. The sea definitely didn't. So everyone got up. The first task was usually cleaning the deck. That may sound surprisingly responsible for a group of pirates, but a dirty deck became dangerous very quickly. Fish remains, mud, grease, loose rope, splintered wood, rainwater. All of it turned the deck into something resembling an obstacle course designed by someone with a personal grudge against ankles. So sailors scrubbed, and scrubbed, and scrubbed some more, sometimes with seawater, sometimes with coarse stones. The goal wasn't making the ship beautiful. The goal was staying alive. After that came the ropes. If you've ever seen pictures of old sailing ships, you've probably noticed what appears to be an impossible jungle of lines stretching in every direction. There were ropes for sails, ropes for anchors, ropes for lifting cargo, ropes for securing boats, ropes attached to other ropes that somehow mattered very much to someone. Learning them all took months, maybe years, and if you grabbed the wrong one at the wrong time, well, let's just say dozens of very tired sailors would immediately know exactly who to blame. There wasn't much patience for beginners, not because pirates were unusually cruel, mostly because mistakes could snap a sail loose or send heavy equipment crashing across the deck. Experience mattered a lot. Even famous pirate captains had usually spent years at sea before becoming pirates. Very few people simply woke up one morning and announced, "You know what? Crime on the ocean sounds delightful." Most had worked aboard merchant ships or naval vessels first. They already understood sailing. Piracy came later, sometimes after poor treatment, sometimes after unpaid wages, sometimes because opportunity knocked wearing an eye patch. Speaking of eye patches, let's quietly retire one of history's biggest pirate myths. Most pirates did not wear eye patches because they had dramatically lost an eye in battle. Some certainly had eye injuries. Life aboard ships was dangerous enough without enemy cannon fire. But historians have also suggested another possibility. Keeping one eye covered allowed it to remain adjusted to darkness. If a sailor suddenly needed to move below deck, he could switch the patch and immediately see better in dim light. It's a clever idea. Whether every pirate did this is impossible to prove, but is certainly more practical than imagining every third sailor losing an eye while looking dramatically into sunsets. Another famous stereotype is the wooden leg. Those certainly existed. Ships were dangerous workplaces. Heavy cargo, sharp tools, explosions, storms, accidents happened constantly. Without modern surgery, losing a limb wasn't uncommon, if someone survived the operation at all. And that survival depended on luck almost as much as skill. Medicine aboard ships was optimistic. The ship's surgeon, if one existed, often relied on experience more than scientific knowledge. Cleanliness wasn't fully understood. Pain relief was limited. Alcohol helped, not medically, mostly emotionally. If someone needed an amputation, the procedure was terrifyingly simple. Work quickly. Hope for the best. Try not to think too hard about it afterward. Fortunately for our sleepy little journey tonight, we'll leave those details safely in the background. It's enough to know that everyone aboard understood injuries could change a life forever. That awareness made experienced sailors surprisingly cautious, not fearless, just realistic. Now let's wander into the kitchen, or more accurately, the galley. Imagine the smallest kitchen you've ever seen. Now place it inside a constantly moving building. Remove most fresh ingredients. Replace them with barrels. Congratulations. You're now cooking for 100 hungry sailors. The cook probably had one of the least glamorous jobs on board. Meals needed preparing regardless of weather, storm outside. People still expected food. Massive waves, still hungry. Ship leaking. Oddly enough, still lunchtime. Cooking over an open fire aboard a wooden ship required incredible care. Nobody wanted dinner to accidentally become an inferno, because wooden ships burn with alarming enthusiasm. So meals stayed simple. Stews, porridge, salted meat, dried beans, occasionally fish, if someone caught enough. Fresh food became a celebration. Perhaps another ship had been captured carrying fruit. Perhaps the pirates stopped briefly on an island. Perhaps hunters returned with birds or wild pigs. Suddenly, everyone remembered vegetables existed for about 3 days. Then it was back to hardtack. Life at sea also meant endless repairs to clothing. People owned very little. A shirt wasn't casually replaced because fashion had changed. You patched it, then patched the patch, then patched that patch. Eventually, your clothes became a fascinating historical puzzle, held together almost entirely by determination. Needles were valuable. Thread mattered. Buttons disappeared with astonishing regularity. Nothing went to waste. Even shoes received endless repairs. Good boots could mean the difference between steady footing and sliding across wet decks into extremely embarrassing situations. Now let's pause for something surprisingly ordinary. Haircuts. Long hair looked impressive in paintings. Reality wasn't quite so glamorous. Lice existed. Fleas existed. Heat existed. Many sailors kept their hair relatively short simply because life became easier that way. Beards came and went depending on preference. Some pirates were clean-shaven. Others proudly wore enormous beards. The famous Blackbeard, for example, cultivated one of history's most recognizable facial hairstyles. It made him appear larger and more intimidating, which, from a professional pirate's perspective, was excellent marketing. The less fighting required, the better. Despite their fearsome reputation, pirates generally preferred surrender over battle. Battles damaged ships, destroyed cargo, killed skilled crew members. Everything about fighting was expensive. If frightening someone into handing over valuables worked instead, perfect. Far less paperwork afterward. Actually, no paperwork at all. which was probably another attraction of piracy. As evening approached, watches continued. Ships never truly slept. Someone always remained awake, looking for storms, watching for other vessels, checking sails, listening for unusual sounds. Imagine standing beneath thousands of stars with nothing around you except black water stretching endlessly in every direction. It sounds peaceful, and sometimes it truly was. The night sky at sea could be breathtaking. Without city lights, the stars appeared almost impossibly bright. The Milky Way stretched overhead like spilled silver. Constellations became familiar companions. Experienced sailors navigated using them. Generations learned the stars long before GPS politely informed drivers to turn left in 300 meters. The ocean at night could also glow. Tiny organisms called bioluminescent plankton sometimes illuminated waves with pale blue light. Every movement through the water created shimmering trails. Fish glowed. The ship glowed. Even the wake sparkled softly. For sailors who had never seen electricity, it must have seemed almost magical. Nature occasionally decided to show off. Of course, 5 minutes later, someone probably slipped on a wet rope and ruined the mood. Balance aboard ship never became completely automatic. Even experienced sailors stumbled. The deck constantly moved beneath your feet. Muscles adjusted without conscious thought. Newcomers looked rather obvious. They walked awkwardly, grabbed every railing, occasionally discovered gravity in unexpected directions. Veteran sailors noticed immediately, not necessarily with cruelty, mostly amusement. Everyone had once been the person trying unsuccessfully to carry a bucket across a moving deck without spilling everything. Few succeeded. Eventually, your body adapted. Then, months later, when returning to land, another strange thing happened. The ground felt like it was moving. Some sailors continued swaying slightly while walking. Their brains had become so accustomed to waves that solid earth suddenly felt suspiciously unstable. Human balance is wonderfully adaptable and wonderfully confusing. As another quiet evening settles across our pirate ship, you've now experienced something closer to reality than legend. Less sword fighting, more scrubbing. Less treasure maps, more repairing socks. Less dramatic speeches, more wondering if tomorrow's breakfast will somehow taste exactly like yesterday's. Spoiler alert, it probably will. Still, somewhere beyond the endless routine, another morning waits, another horizon, another stretch of open sea, and we'll slowly drift there together in the next video. Stay connected.